Yeah, Newman City Council Redevelopment Agency regular meeting of June 22nd to order, please. Please stand, join me in the pledge. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. Lord, we ask you to touch us and give us guidance and wisdom tonight to make the right decisions for our community. And we ask you to bless those who are serving us overseas and bring them home safely. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Candia.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martina.
Present.
Mayor Kate.
Present. Item 5, declaration of conflicts of interest. See, now move to item 6, which is ceremonial matters, and we don't have any this evening. Go to item 7, items from the public, non-agenda item. Any member of the public wish to address the council, please do so now. Step to the podium and state your name.
I'm Mary Moore, president of the Newman Historical Society. Excuse me. I'd like to say hello to everybody here this evening. I'm here as half of the Historical Society, a very small half, and the people that are members have taken it to a vote that they would like to keep the house of the Yancey Lumber House in our backyard. So we would like to come before you again and be placed on the agenda, if that's possible.
You make arrangements to talk to the city manager. And
Sure. Well, Mayor, because this item has come before the council before, and when we talked about the Plaza project, and there was an affirmative vote by the council that the Yancey House still continued to be part of the Plaza, and in conversations with the Historical Society, they've asked that the council reconsider that. In order to reconsider that, they're coming before you tonight to ask you to replace that on the agenda for further consideration.
Council concur?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, that's fine. We can.
Okay.
You want to put down at a later date? I assume.
Yeah, we can't do it tonight because
exactly.
it's not on the agenda tonight.
Exactly.
But again, because there was already an action by this council,
That's correct.
Yeah.
we thought the appropriate way was for the society themselves to come and personally request that this be put on the agenda and get an affirmative from the council. So if I'm hearing an affirmative now and the direction be provided to us as staff, we will schedule that item to be rediscussed and for potential action by the council, either the first meeting in July or the second meeting in July, if that's the concurrence in the direction of the council.
Mary, and previously when this was discussed, and I don't remember which side of the fence you were on at the time. I don't know. Were you part of the group who insisted?
I was neutral,
Okay.
as long as it wasn't tore down.
There was strong sentiment that it be kept in the plaza, and the room wasn't, well, it's probably fuller than it is now, by many
Right.
people who wanted
Right.
it there, and opposed that. At one time we were talking about eliminating it from the general plan to go into the plaza, or for the plaza project. So,
Well, I know one of those women that were here that night that voiced her opinion to put it in the plaza has since changed her mind. We have a fenced-in yard. We can fix it up quite nice. Barbara has been working with Stephanie on some things, and I think it would be good if she could explain it to
do
you.
you have room for it over there next to the outhouse and everything else that you've just
Pardon,
put over
was
there?
it- what
Do you
was
have
that?
room for it over there?
Yes, it's in a room. We have gotten rid of some of the equipment that was out there.
Okay. I'm not opposed to hearing more conversation about it, so.
No. And
That's
your
fine.
motion was that the Historical Society would pay for that, all repairs, right?
Yeah.
We don't
Mary,
have any
you're
money, nor
speechless.
can these old bones do it. If you don't mind, I'd have Barbara come up and explain a little bit of what she's found out.
I don't mind at all.
Okay, thank you.
Step on up, Barbara. I mean, who are we to oppose the Women's Club and the Historical Society? We're a little bit smarter than that.
I do have a question to ask you. How many of you been in the Newman Museum?
I have.
Yeah. And Bob, you have too,
Yeah,
but that's been 20 years ago.
Well, it's been too long.
It's been too long. Well, because of the city council going over to the museum several years ago, the museum now has air conditioning. We picked one of the hottest days for them after a meeting to go over. But the other question that I'm really concerned about is how many have you seen the museum's backyard and gone into the museum's backyard to see what is actually there?
I have.
We have a mess back there. The museum's backyard is really bad. It hasn't been taken care of for many years. The equipment and everything is all crammed together now because the house went in. We have had several pieces of the equipment removed for donations. But during meetings and everything, Newman Historical Society has discussed the backyard, and the discussion leads to how horrible it is back there. And we needed money and assistance. And because your Stephanie has done such a beautiful job collecting money from the federal government with grant money, I called her one day to see what she could do to help the Historical Society apply for grants for the backyard. And we talked for quite a while, and she said that she would like us to send her a notice of what we really wanted and what areas we felt there was concern about. And so we did that. These were applying for federal grants for the monies to repair what is in the backyard. And the ending was about the Yancey building, because if we could get grants for other things in our backyard, could we get a grant to restore the Yancey building up to its previous beautiful self? And she did some checking, and she found that if money was available, we'd receive grant money, and the house was restored, then it had to stay there. And no, we knew at the time we made the presentation that in August of 2008, the City Council did vote for the building to be moved to the Plaza on Phase 2. Areas of concern in the backyard for us is that the need for a shelter for a lot of the equipment. Now, when Jim Silvera was mayor, we, the Historical Society, paid, I think it was $185 to have the engineer put in a plan of putting a backyard in, a covered area. And that just went by the wayside. And we do need somewhat of a shelter, whether the house is there or not, for some of the equipment that we would like to see repaired. We'd like to try to locate and pay for a person to fix the farm equipment to better conditions. It doesn't have to be 100%, but it has sat for so long without being repaired. And we'd like to have a rearrangement of the equipment and the yard for a better viewing and safety factor. Right now, you can't have really the public in there because it's not safe. Also, a modernization of the water flow we'd like to see done from the roof of the museum into the backyard. The roof is in such condition, as far as not flat, but very little slant, that we have 3 large hoses that run the water out into the backyard. And then the last was applying grass sprinklers and gravel into the backyard area. And today, Gardner met with us, and we do have one area that was dug up when we put the handicap ramp in, and the sprinklers are still there. So when there is time, they will be putting grass in that one area, and that will make it look a lot better. Through the city budget, we were aware that the federal grant monies have been received by the city of Newman, and they have been placed in different areas. There's 3 areas that could pertain to the things that we would like. And I am going to be giving you what I have so that you can read through it and you check, because we're not really informed on how the budget works. We just know that there's monies that are there, but whether they will work for us in the backyard without grant monies on our own applying for it or not, I don't know. The Historical Society feels a task force is needed with several of the city council, City of Newman employees, and the Newman Historical Society, so we can sit down and we can talk about the needs for that backyard to bring it up to date and work with it before applying, because we have to have everything in order when you apply for a grant, is what Stephanie has said. The question was asked when we were talking for grants for the backyard, could a grant be restored for the Yancey building? And restoring the building now at this location is, like I said before, and then moving it over to the Plaza, because that's where it's been voted to go, hopefully could be done. It cannot be done. The question came up as to where the Historical Society needed to be placed, and as Mary said, we had a vote. And the members, 25-4, wanted it to remain in its area now, but taken care of. If the Yancey building remains where it is now, that was asked, what will the Newman Historical Society care to do with it? We would like to see it as an extension of the museum. We have so much furniture stored because we have no room in the museum to place it. We have several old pieces of wicker. We have Dr. Armstead's bedroom set. We have a Stonecipher's couch. These are all over 100 years old. But the thing that is really special that we have that would see its place in the Yancey building is that when they moved that building in from Hills Ferry to its spot before it was moved, when they checked the attic, Mrs. Yancey's wedding dress was there, and we have it. And we've had it on display on several different occasions, and it needs to be on display at the Yancey building, and we would certainly like to see it there. And the Yancey building now, in the condition it is, fits right into the time zone of our farm equipment. And so fixing up some of our farm equipment and fixing up the Yancey building there, it would all blend together, and I think it would make a very good display and a walkway for the people to come and visit. I want to bring again the task force that I feel we should have and join together to discuss the needs of the museum's backyard and what we would like to see done with it, and getting the application for federal grant money to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
And I'm going to pass these out so that you know what has transpired. The top one is the original, copy of the original that I sent to Stephanie, explaining the Historical Society's feelings on the museum's backyard, and then the other is what I had written for tonight's. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, move to item 8, the consent calendar. A is waive all readings of ordinances, resolution except by title. B is approval of the warrants. C is approval of the minutes of the June 8th, 2010 regular meeting. D is adopt resolution number 2010 next in number. Resolution ratifying memorandum of understanding between the City of Newman and Operating Engineers Local 3, Police Officers, Corporals, and Sergeants Bargaining Unit. E is approved resolution for employer-paid member contributions. Subsection 1, adopt resolution number 2010 next in number, resolution for employer-paid member contributions for miscellaneous employees. 2, adopt resolution number 2010 next in number, a resolution for employer-paid member contributions for management employees. And 3, adopt resolution number 2010 next in number, a resolution for employer-paid member contributions for public safety, for safety employees. Whew.
Good job.
Make a motion, we approve the consent calendar as is.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9, public hearings. I don't see any this evening. We're going to move under regular business item 10, E, which is the adopt resolution number 2010, extra number, a resolution adopting a revised City of Newman emergency operations plan. We have Chief Henshaw here to make that presentation. So the item E will be moved up to item A. Welcome, Gary. When's the last time you were in Newman?
Well, it's been a little while.
Welcome
Mayor
back.
Caton, members of the City Council, Mr. Holland, Mr. Allen, and Gary Henshaw, Stanislaus County Fire Warden, Office of Emergency Services. It's always a pleasure to get back over this way. I think a couple times I've been over here, been on emergencies, so that's probably fitting, but we'd like to not draw attention to that tonight. I'd rather draw attention to the things that we would do before an event, and then good insurance policies, we don't have to do anything at all. So thanks for the invitation over here this evening. If I work this right, we'll see if we can get there. The purpose of let's start with the funding on this, because a lot of people always ask, how do we put these plans together? They're a requirement of the city under the State Emergency Services Act, but we are also the recipient of the Homeland Security grants. In fact, this morning Supervisor DeMartini and the Board of Supervisors approved our application for what we call FY10, fiscal year 10 in the Homeland Security. And it usually brings in a little over $1 million, very specific as to how we use those funds, but one of the components based in the grant application is planning and plan development. And with me tonight is Chris Homer. She develops the plan. I have a special thanks to Chief Richardson and to Lieutenant Short for their input on the plan, because we don't do the plan at our office. We do the plan in concert with your folks. This is your plan, so we want to make sure that it has all the issues that you need to see here. I always like to ask, how safe are we as communities? And I have my supervisor out here in the community as well, and he can't answer this question, but for the rest of you, you know, we always think that we're pretty safe in our communities. We really don't have many events. What was the last time we really did have an event that threatened our community? And I'm talking about a disaster. It raised above the level of day-to-day. My office only gets involved when a local jurisdiction exceeds their capabilities and they reach out for mutual aid and they need something within the community or the county that we can help them with. And I like to point to Riverbank, maybe because Chris comes from that area, but they had 2 inches of rain in a 45-minute period in the downtown. They had much of their downtown flooded and inundated. They had raw sewage floating in the streets. They had law enforcement issues, fire issues. They had rescue issues. And the first call we got from the city manager is, Houston, we have a problem. Well, actually what we do then is we bring those assets and resources within the county to assist you in manage an event inside your community to bring them back to normal. So we really reach out within the county to find those assets and resources. If we can't find them there, we go to what they call a region. It makes up an 11-county region. I place a call to the regional, what they call a REOC, the Regional Emergency Operations Center. They place those requests to the nearest jurisdiction in our surrounding counties and say, can you get those resources for us? And if we can't fill it there, we go to the state. The state goes to 58 counties. And then, of course, if we can't fill it there, we go to those nice people from FEMA at the federal government level, and we wait a few days for them to get here. I don't want to make light of that. They are an asset and a resource, but they are a ways out, and that's important to understand. The purpose of your EOP is really, it establishes that baseline. So if you take a look in your blue binder that you have there, we'll run through the pieces of this fairly quickly. It establishes a management system that's required by law under the State Emergency Services Act for you as a city council and emergency services during a time of disaster, how you're going to perform. It creates a standard emergency management system. Again, a state requirement. You're a signature to the SIMS agreement. It's due for recirculation. We have to go back to that process. We're in the currently finishing the final draft of that will be out to the city probably within the next couple of months for the SIMS required language that we are all signatures, the county and the 9 cities. And it complies with the National Incident Management System. California built a thing called ICS, Incident Command System. The federal government borrowed it following Katrina, and they now call it National Incident Management System. And Mr. Mayor, you're very familiar with that, so you're aware of where we're going on this system. All of the cities and the county make up what they call an operational area council, again under the SIMS emergency management system. SIMS came about in 1981 when Senator Petrus lost his home in the Oakland Hills fire. And if you recall, most of us remember that day pretty good. As that burned through those hills over there, you give us and the fire service pretty good credit that we can go any place and act collectively together. Well, that wasn't the case. We were on different radio frequencies. We had different hose sizes, different couplings, different threads. We didn't function very nicely together. Law enforcement and fire couldn't talk to each other. We were actually in each other's way in some degree. So Senator Petrus passed a piece of legislation called SIMS under the Emergency Services Act that requires us to perform under a standard emergency management. We have to talk the same language, use the same frequencies, and be somewhat consistent in how we approach day-to-day emergencies. I bring up this slide because I think it's important. In what we call our Operational Area Council that you're a participant on, we have our non-governmental agencies, our faith-based communities, our utilities, or their MID, TID, our animal services, our public health official, our ag commissioner, our schools and utilities. We have probably about 30 agencies that make up this group, and this group takes a look at disaster and emergency management throughout the county so that we function as one body. And I want to touch on the Disaster Council in a minute, Mr. Mayor, because I think that's pretty important. You said on that. The plan is really broke out into 5 components. There's the basic plan, the attachments that you'll see, glossary of terms. We talk in acronyms. I apologize if I do. Stop me. I'll go back because sometimes we use that as a language and it's just not appropriate. We're going to talk a little bit about emergency functions, and I want to draw your attention to the annexes. When we put together your emergency plan in conjunction with your police chief, most of the plan that you will adopt, or should you choose to adopt, is pretty much boilerplate, set in concrete, 30,000 foot. But the annexes in the back, the annexes, if you take a look at those, we would recommend for your consideration that you leave those as dynamic documents. And the reason I say that is you can adjust an annex fairly easy, and I'll give you a couple examples. We didn't see H1N1 coming until May of 2006. I mean, we saw it, but we didn't think that it was really going to be an event that we had to address. We built an annex for that very quickly. Back in 2002, the supervisors directed our office to build an annex and a plan for exotic Newcastles, and most of you have a little bit of a farming background or a very strong farming background. You understand the threat that that created to our poultry industry in Stanislaus County. So our annexes, we believe, need to be somewhat dynamic, really done at the local level. They're part of your document, but they really don't require your council's approval every time you want to add an annex. But the basic part of the plan is yours to adopt and only can be changed with your approval. So the next piece would be really the breakdown of these. The purpose is really establishes the framework and meets the SIMS, NIMS, ICS requirements in the state. Concept of operations, that's the piece that we consider to be the most important. That's what do you do preparedness-wise, what do you do when you have to go into response and mitigation mode, and probably the most important is recovery. How do we bring our community back to normal and help offset some of their costs that they may have incurred or their losses? Next one is the hazard threats. We've gone through and used kind of our standard 5 that we use: landslides, floods, earthquakes, fires, the biggies. But today we look at this as an all-risk environment. We didn't see pandemic, we didn't see H1N1, we didn't see exotic Newcastles. We know how to deal with floods and fires pretty good because they have a geographical boundary. We can go outside that boundary, get resources, and bring them to bear for mitigation and response into that. But if we have a biological event, I don't believe that the supervisor is going to allow us to send our public health official to another part of the state when we don't know if it could be here yet. It doesn't have a geographical boundary. So we're going to keep those assets and resources locally, and that's a decision that we'll show you how we make in a couple minutes. Reconstitution of Government. If the city manager is not here, then it goes to the police chief. You spell out how your government continues to function should there be a vacancy caused by an unfortunate event. Emergency Operations Center, your plan identifies 2 that you have within the city. So if the primary is not available, you go to the secondary and it's spelled out. Emergency proclamations, and I'm looking at Mr. Hallinan here. This is the 3rd presentation that he's had the fortunate time to sit through, and I tried to dismiss him today, but Mr. Holland wouldn't let him go. He's been through this in a couple other cities, so he's acutely aware of it, but he is well versed in your ability to help you walk through a local proclamation. And a time of a disaster is not the time you want to look at your attorney and say, develop a local proclamation. There are several of them listed for you in the back, and Mr. Hallinan is well versed in that. Recovery, again, it's the biggest piece. We may have an event, but how do we bring our community back to normal? If we go into the contents, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, there's charts in the back that outline emergency function. It's a new requirement, a new recommendation from the federal government to the state, state to the local government. You're way ahead of the curve. I was at a statewide meeting the other day, and many communities are just now beginning to wrestle with this. You've spent a lot of time with your police department, your fire department. We've done a lot of work through our public health official, our ag commissioner, animal services. So a lot of that work's already been done. We'll talk about that. The decision process, the operational area council, and disaster council. The Board of Supervisors directed me here within the last year to go back and take a look, research, and bring forward the Disaster Council. The Disaster Council was created in this county in 1946, and it was made up of several local community representatives that were in the time just post-World War II that were going to protect the homeland and the home front here. We went back and did a lot of research, brought that forward. It has great value today as it relates to the issues specific to how you approve your plans. But we have a disaster council that's made up of the 9 cities in the county, and your mayor, Mr. Keaton, sits on that very first meeting that we've had probably in 10 or 15 years. So that will be very important because we brought to you the public health officials plan, and you approved that, and the county's emergency operations plan, and you approved that. So that is our governing body that we start with. Then we bring it back to you. They have no ability to tell you how to direct your plans, but they are a recommending body to make sure that they're consistent with all the other counties and cities, or all the other cities in the county, so our plans mirror each other. They complement each other. Within your plan is the Emergency Services Act, and we'll talk a minute about that. Your Emergency Services Ordinance, which is specific to you. It has the Disaster Council, maps and tables, and it goes on from there. Emergency functions. In emergency functions, this is really the piece that takes us from the 30,000-foot level that your plan really writes down to the more operational level. The police chiefs in the county have got together and said, this is how we would perform, and this is the template that we would use. The fire service has done that. Public health has done that. Animal services has done that. Our SR 911, the Stanislaus Regional 911 system, has done that. We want to make sure that it's just not a plan that sits on a shelf someplace, that they can implement it and that it means something in a time of disaster. The last thing we want them to do is pull out a 100-page document and start looking for roles and responsibilities when there's something going on in your community. That's not the time to educate yourself. That's the time to act. So we've got emergency functions that are in there for you. And this is how they break down. I think I may have mentioned that Public Works, huge. They have all kinds of assets and resources that we would use in floods, road closures, those kinds of heavy equipment pieces that we need, all the way down to animal services. And there's a piece of legislation that Supervisor DeMartini called me on one day that was passed in Sacramento that requires us to put together an emergency operations plan for companion and domestic animals, and that was passed in the last couple of years. So you have to have a plan on how to manage those. In the past, we would not let those in a place that we did for care and shelter, an evacuation center. Today, you really can't evacuate people and not take their companion animals. So that's an issue that we had to address. A couple of the annexes that we have in ours, we have an agricultural annex. We built one with Homeland Security dollars that was adopted by all 50, there's actually 58 counties, 56 ag commissioners about 3 years ago. Ag is our biggest issue here in this county, and we worry about that probably more than we do earthquakes, floods, and fires for the most part. We had exotic Newcastles that was in the southern part of the state in 2002. At that time, the poultry industry in Stanislaus County was a $197 million industry. It had a multiplier of 6, refrigeration, transportation, packaging, railway, veterinary services, grain industry, all the associated services. It was a $1 billion industry to Stanislaus County. The Board of Supervisors, through the then CEO, made sure that we put together a plan, and we worked with our poultry partners to make sure that if we had an outbreak here, we were prepared to respond in a timely fashion and meet the needs of our private industry. So that was a threat to our community that we thought was very important. Foot and mouth disease or something in our food or delivery systems would cause great panic, and we need to make sure that we have a plan that's in place. We did. We wrote this plan. It was adopted up and down the state. The University of Minnesota picked it up through Homeland Security, and they consider it to be a best practice. It's shared now nationwide. It's the template for a plan. It's included in our plan. How do we make decisions at a local level, and how do these things go above, and who makes those decisions? Because I think it's important for local policymakers to understand where you fit in. You fit in through the Disaster Council, but you also fit in through another process, and it's called a TAG, and I'm going to start at the bottom. It's a threat assessment. We have a policy in our Emergency Operations Center I serve as the Assistant Director of the Office of Emergency Services. The Director is the CEO of the county, Rick Robinson. He is the Director. So what happens if the Ag Commissioner calls me, and it generally happens on 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, we have a problem. At that point, really between the public health official or the Ag Commissioner, the subject matter expert, if it rises to the level that we need to take some action, we put it in one of 3 categories. 1, we acknowledge it exists and we need to monitor it. Number 2, it needs to be closely monitored and we need to do some sort of action on it. Number 3, we need to take action immediately. Based on that tag, it escalates up to the MAC. And in the MAC, which is the Multi-Agency Coordination Group, you would probably be involved. If it was in this community, we would grab your emergency manager, through your police chief, probably through your city manager, and say, this event is evolving and it has its capabilities to spread or is in your community. Now we want to start making some policy decisions. We bring legal to the table, environmental resources, our animal services, our public health official. We bring the subject matter experts. And when H1N1 occurred in May of 2006, we had all the school representatives, we had the director of the schools, and we reached out and touched all of them to make sure that the initial part that came out of the CDC is that we send kids home if we have an outbreak in your community for 7 days. Well, if we'd have sent all the kids home in a school, if we suspected that we had a disease, we have a whole lot of kids running the street and parents trying to figure out where that. We created a greater disaster responding to the disaster than we did. So we took a lot of time and painstakingly went through the MAC system to make sure schools tell us what the impacts, public health, tell us can we isolate these folks. It wasn't one subject matter making the decision. It was the collective strength of several people. If you remember September 11th when all of us were fixated on the TV. Well, most of our schools started getting bomb threats, if you'll recall, about that time. Probably a different role, Mr. Mayor. You probably were out there chasing those around. We had activated our Emergency Operations Center, and we brought our MAC together in the morning. We were having some conversations about what are the issues that we see in our community. And one of them was bomb threats at schools. And we had a utility, a Pacific Bell guy sitting right next to a police officer that said, we have trap and trace. They turned on the trap and trace, and within an hour we caught the first kid that figured this was his get out of school pass for the day that called in a bomb threat to his school. And we started catching them and their parents, and the law enforcement took intervening action. And we were one of the first communities in the state that turned that off within the first 12 to 24 hours. Otherwise, most communities suffered that for about 4 or 5 days until things settled back down. And it was because the right people were in the room to make a good decision for our community. So it escalates up to that process. I'm going to take a second here and I want to show you something that maybe your community would be interested in. We have a tool that we purchased through the Board of Supervisors in conjunction with part of our Homeland Security grant, and it's a notification system. We can go on to a geographical boundary, and I can draw a line around the city of Newman, and we can pre-can a message or we can record a message that says shelter in place, we have a train derailment, or we have a lost individual in our community that may be suffering from Alzheimer's. We can use this tool for emergencies, and we can just draw a polygon on a map. I can do it from my house. When I put that in with authentication, it takes your emergency manager and your city manager say light that off, then that can send, right now we can do 6,000 calls per hour. Within the next couple of months, we're upgrading that technology through some phoneware changes that allow us 30,000 calls per hour. We've used this thing 6 times now, once for a fire in Riverbank that had organophosphates, once for a retirement center in Turlock that was without power. We had a sulfur fire on the edge of Key, our series, that we had to do some sheltering in place. We've used it for a couple training drills along the rivers for flood notifications, and we've had really good work. The piece that I bring it to your attention for is that there's a self-registration component. The Strategic Business Technologies, the IT portion of the county, we went to them and said, we need to have, our technology is great because it hits a land-based phone. How many of us are home next to our land-based phones? How many of you depend on your cell phones? This allows you to go onto the Stan OES website. You can log into the piece where the arrow is where it says notification self-registration, and when you log in there you can log your cell phone to 5 different locations. So if you have a parent, a grandparent, you have a child, you have a caregiver, you can log in all of those addresses, and if we initiate a notification, it will come directly to your cell phone for that specific address, and you can put 5 per cell phone. And in about 6 months, you'll get an email from us that says you need to go back and re-up that. You're the ones responsible because many people change their cell phone numbers. It's your responsibility to update that, but we'll send you an email back that will say it's time to either update your information or confirm that it is correct. And we have a lot of people doing this that they have a parent, maybe like I did, that lived in the Oakdale region and I live down in the Turlock area. It's pretty terrific if I know something's going on in that area that I can get out and help my parents. So something for you to consider. It is available on our website. It's free of charge. You can go in and log in. Now, I talked quite a bit. I'm going to ask you for questions, but I want one more thing for you to pay attention to. How many of you as elected official have this very ugly, bright-colored bag that you carry with you all the time? No, most of us don't, but I do. In this, if you don't have one, I'd like to work through your emergency manager. We will get you, Chris in our office will make sure that you have one. These are for the elected officials. Everyone in Stanislaus County has given this a few years ago. Inside this, it really is comprised of stuff for you. On this thumb drive, which we will update, is your emergency operation plan if you adopt this. All of our contact information is there. For our elected officials, we have your checklist, immediate action, legal. It spells out your roles and responsibilities. Just a quick way to go down the numbers. Do I have all the right people in the room? Do I have all the information that I need? We put on a few years ago the Elected Officials Guide to Disasters. That's available in there. We give you a nice map, and we have all the Emergency Services Act hard drawn here, and we also have some sample language for your attorney, which I know knows how to do this, so you probably don't need it, but it's nice to have should he be not available for a moment. Anyway, if you don't have this pad folio, we'll be happy to make sure that we get one for each of you as members, and we'll take your thumb drive. Chris will contact your police chief. We'll grab your thumb drives when if you've agreed to this and you've adopted this. We'll update that information and get those back to you, but this is kind of a handy little tool. We're thinking about putting on some more courses for you through Homeland Security, which would include another elected officials workshop. We do the ICS 100, 200, 300, 400. We do several classes. They're free of charge. You're in the county. If you're interested, go onto our website, give us a call. We'll give you a hand with any of that. Mr. Mayor,
Great.
Can I answer any questions?
Any questions of Gary? Anybody?
Just a quick question. How prepared do you think we are for an emergency right now?
Well, I always get asked, do I sleep good at night knowing what I know? Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you why. I think, in general terms, I think this county is better prepared for events than many counties. One, when we got the Homeland Security grants a number of years ago, it was the choice of the police chiefs, the fire chiefs, the public health officials in our office and the direction of the CEO. We're not going to silo this money. Law enforcement, you're not going to walk away with a piece of it and buy this toy. And environmental resources, you're not going to do that. And I'll tell you how we did that. Law enforcement wanted some pretty sophisticated detection equipment. They're about $30,000. Hazmat had the detection equipment, but they wanted some robotics that the sheriff had. Well, rather than buy each of them one of those, they got together and started training together. And now we have a very effective team that they have that. And we could use that money in other areas. I think the reason that we would be successful is we're communicating. I'll take that plan and leave it on the other end of the deal. If I know the mayor and the city manager and something goes wrong or the police chief calls and says, we have a problem, communication is the key to it. If it's anything, it's communications, collaboration, and coordination. And if we're duplicating our effort, we're wasting our time. We have great communication. We have one of the best public health officials, I think, in the state. He communicates all the time on issues. In fact, we had our first dead bird from West Nile the other day, and it comes right on out, and it gets shared out to our emergency managers. And it's not something that we think is too critical, but it's a communication line that we need to keep open all the time. Mr. Holland called me when we had the San Joaquin River issues over here. We got the National Weather Service, some of the flood folks, and we walked out there with you taking a look at some of the challenges that you have. I think the county stands, and I can't speak certainly for the board member, he can speak better than I can for the county, but the county's prepared to help the cities. By law, I'm only required to open our emergency operations center when 2 or more cities call me. You call me. The center is yours. It's up and running, and it's to meet your needs. Now, when it gets right down to it, can we afford enough government to meet all these things? The Bee called the other day, and they wanted to know about the heat emergencies. Well, we grew up in the valley. It gets hot in the valley. But we certainly didn't see 2007, 2006, 2007 when we had that 5-day period where we had the real high temperatures with the real high nighttime. And all of National Weather Service recorded history going back to 1878, they have never seen 3 days with a nighttime temperature above 80 degrees with a daytime temperature above 105 with that relative humidity. But most of us grew up in the valley. We didn't see that coming, but we had prepared an emergency declaration for poultry and dairy and our beef industry on a Friday. We didn't see it hitting the human side until Monday morning when Dr. Walker called and said, the coroner's mentioned that we've got a heat fatality here. We immediately went on conference calls with all 9 city emergency managers. What's going on in your community? Do you have any needs? And we started communicating. We declared within 2 hours of the first declaration, the second declaration, both for poultry and ag, and then for humans. So I think we stand a pretty good chance of being effective. We can't afford all the things that we'd like to have. That means we have to be very creative, and I really believe that we have in the 9 cities a good assembly of folks that know their interests, know their community, and they can communicate it very quick. And Mr. Holland can pick that phone up and call, and we'll be right there. Now, I can't predict all those issues. The one that worries me the most is the one that you can't see, smell, taste, feel. It's usually a biological event that doesn't have a physical boundary. Fire, we can go get resources and bring them in. A flood, we can get people out and then bring some resources in. But a biological event in humans or poultry or animal or even in our food supply, that one's going to be a bit of a challenge. But our private industry, they're working with us real close, and that's important. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. I'll sleep better tonight.
You have a good team. You really do. You have some good folks right here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I've known Gary for a long time, and if everybody was as passionate about their job as he was, we'd all be better off, and we're better off in our county having you there, Gary. So
Appreciate
thank you
that.
so much.
We get a lot of support from those guys.
Yep, we do.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it back to the council for direction on item E.
I so move that we adopt resolution number 2010, next number, a resolution adopting the revised City of Newman Emergency Operation Plan.
Second.
And a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to item, which was A, approve fiscal year 2010-2011 annual budget as presented in the preliminary budget document.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, at our last City Council meeting, prior to that, we had a budget workshop, and based upon the presentation and direction of the council, we adjusted the budget accordingly, which was a net increase of $1,000 for the West Side Healthcare Task Force. Before I get too far into it, I just want to know, are there any more questions or comments or anything that people, you, the council, would like us to address as part of the preliminary budget? If not, there's some procedural things that we need to take care of tonight. Some of those are, we have to establish some limits. Back in 1979, there was Proposition 4, and then back in 1990, there was also Proposition 111, also known as the GAN Initiative, and those require us to set some appropriation limits. A lot of those were based on those fiscal year, and it has some escalators in, so our appropriation limit is $10,167,040. The city's appropriation right now is under the legal, is $3.668 million. So we're under by almost $6.5 million, so we have plenty of space there. And again, we have to adopt a few resolutions here, and what we're asking you to do tonight is, one, a resolution adopting the 2010-11 annual budget, a second, which would establish appropriation limits, and third would be adopting a 2010-11 redevelopment agency annual budget. So there's 3 different actions that we do need tonight. So with that, I've kind of jumped around a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I can answer any questions that you may have with respect to our budget.
Any questions of the city manager? Council direction?
I so move that we adopt resolution adopting the 2010-2011 annual budget, resolution establishing the appropriation limit for fiscal year 2010-2011, resolution adopting 2010-11 redevelopment agency annual budget.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, go to item B is adopt resolution number 2010, next number, a resolution modifying the date of completion for the underground utility district numbers 5A, 5B, and 5C in the city of Newman. Partner.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you stated, the item before you tonight is to consider adopting a resolution modifying the completion dates for the underground utility districts numbers 5A, B, and C for the city of Newman. Originally, the utility districts 5A, B, and C were established on the 24th of August 2007 by City Council Resolution 2007-48. However, due to delays with the project, with establishing the trenching agent, design delays, and things of that nature. On May 26, 2009, I came before council to get those dates modified for the installation of those underground districts for 5A and 5B of July 30th, 2010, and for 5C for July 30th, 2011. To date, the composite drawings have been completed. However, the required utility easements have not been acquired, and the trenching agent was just recently established, and that was AT&T, and that was a struggle at that. The affected utility companies have met and discussed the necessary work to finish this project at this time, and it has been determined the remaining work to be completed for 5A and 5B, it would be to include completing the legal descriptions and acquiring the easements, contracting for the trenching for the different agencies, and converting the affected properties from overhead to underground service. Our city engineer has reviewed the legal descriptions. They're sitting on my desk at this time for us to review, and has prepared the composite drawings, and AT&T, as I stated, has agreed to be the trenching agent for this project. Therefore, the revised schedule for the completion of these is recommended for 5A and 5B, which all the affected utility agencies have agreed in writing to, has been for December 31st, 2011, and for 5C be December 31st. I'm sorry, 5A and 5B would be December 31st, 2011, and 5C would be December 31st, 2012. Therefore, it's our recommendation, City Council adopt a resolution modifying the dates of completion for the underground utility districts 5A, 5B, and 5C. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Questions of Garner? Council direction?
I move that we adopt resolution 2010, next number, a resolution modifying the date of completion of the underground utility district numbers 5A, 5B, and 5C in the city of Newman.
Second motion.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item C is consider adoption of resolution 2010, next number, resolution awarding the bid for the Worst feasibility study flood control project soil borings, authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement and authorizing staff to enter into a MOU with Stanislaus County for credit as work in kind for this project. Garner?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I have a brief overview of the project itself, and then I'll get into the feasibility study and the soil boring. So I'll give a brief history on this project. Before I get started into the slide presentation, over the last 80 years, we've had approximately 50-plus flooding events in the city of Newman. Most recent and significant events were in 95 and 98. The 1995 event was the largest event in over 70 years, with about 12,000 cubic feet per second coming down the Orristemba Creek. This overwhelmed the city and caused an estimated damage of about $5.6 million in our area. As a result, in 1996, the Stanislaus County prepared a hazard mitigation grant application, and in 1998, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers initiated the Orristemba Feasibility Study Flood Control Project. Since 1998, several options were developed and recommended, and with the option of the local preferred plan, that is the most economical plan that still meets the needs of all the stakeholders involved in the project. Here's a list of the stakeholders involved. Stanislaus County was the sponsor, as I stated, for the project. Dennis Cardoza office has been heavily involved in this project, as the mayor has, the City of Newman, Department of Fish and Game, step out of the way so you can see, and the Nature Conservancy, Corps of Engineers, CCID, and a lot of the local landowners. This slide represents the watershed that affects the flooding in our area. It starts way up in our foothills to the west of us, includes Orristemba Creek, 134 square miles, Crow Creek, about 31 miles roughly, and an alluvial fan that varies depending on the size of the event that we have within our area. As a result of the watershed, this is a map depicting what happens in our area given a certain size event that includes flooding from the Orristemba watershed clear across to the San Joaquin River, and from Crow's Landing south to south of Newman. So it's quite a large area that gets inundated. If you're here in the 95 flood event, it was very significant. The Corps of Engineers established this as the potential economic impact areas within the area, the dark blue being your rural economic impact areas, and then the light blue being our urban areas that receive damage as a result of the flooding. Here's a chart that shows the historical events over the last 80 years within our area, and you can see the 95 and 98 events are right here, which are very significant. The previous event, which is over 70 years ago, or 50 years ago, I'm sorry, was this event here. So we've had some significant events recently, and then even in 2010, we had a little scare that happened when the creek did rise up to its embankments and was right at the verge of going over. So we have had quite the history of flooding throughout our area. So here's just kind of I threw this slide in here to kind of depict a little bit of what we have going on. You know, that you can see this is in 95 or 98, I'm not quite sure, and this is probably in the 50s. These are pictures that the Corps has put together, and then this was in 2010 when we had all the debris building up on the railroad trestle. And some of the opportunities we have is, you know, some of the things we've talked about, and some of the opportunities that face us now is to look at the railroad trestle. That's one of our big bottlenecks out there, and then try to restore the channel through the Orristemba Creek, which was over the years has deteriorated, or man-made objects have gotten in the way. So that's some of the opportunities that we're looking at. And the objective would be to reduce the risk to public safety from flooding, increase our hydrogeological and geomorphic functions of the creek, and obviously reduce our flood damage to our urban and ag areas. Quick little drawing of what they propose to do. This is called a Chevron Levee that they propose to build in this area. One option is to build a Chevron Levee on top of the existing west side of the CCID canal. Another option they're looking at is moving about 60 feet away as an option and building a separate Chevron Levee in this area so that they can monitor if any water is seeping underneath it. They feel at this point that this may not be an opportunity for them to monitor if any water was seeping underneath the canals. Here's the map of where that Chevron Levee alignment would be. Starting down in the Newman Wasteway area, moving along the west side of the CCID canal up to the Noxon Ditch, and then including some creek improvement in this area here to increase the flow capacity of the Orristemba Creek. Costs, this is the big shocker here. About $42 million is the estimated cost at this point in time. It's a big ticket, it's a big item. However, we have some opportunities for some potential cost shares. That's always the one that gets your heart going or get you thinking. However, there is an opportunity that we may get some federal cost share. About 65% of this could be shared cost with the federal government, dropping that number down to about $18,600,000. Still a big number, but we have another opportunity that we may be able to partnership with the state to reduce that number even further. That's always the biggest and hardest one to swallow there. Oops, you back that up for me. So that's kind of a rundown on the project. So at this point in time, the feasibility study has basically come to a stop. They've run out of funding at the Corps level and at the county, and there's still some additional work that they need to do to complete the project, to complete the feasibility study, not just the project. There's 3 steps we're looking at: is a feasibility study to determine if the project's feasible and the economic impacts of that, and then to move into the design phase and then the construction phase. So in order to finish the feasibility study, the Corps is asking or requesting that we do some soil borings and a little more survey work to establish some grades out there in that area. However, the Corps has expended their money, so they're coming to, the Corps and the county has come to the city of Newman and requested if we could look into the opportunity to provide that type of work. So as a result of that, I went out to bid, or the work would be considered a work in kind, I apologize for that, a local cost share. The Corps estimates the service for them to do it at about $165,000. That seemed quite expensive, and they are out of funding at this point in time. So then they came to the city of Newman and asked as an opportunity that we may be able to provide that work. So the Public Works Department did go out and do an RFP for the work, and in order to do that, we had to make sure that before we could enter into any kind of a contract, I asked the Corps of Engineers to get the right of entry agreements signed and in place. As of today, they have those in hand. I haven't seen them, but they said they do have all the right of entry agreements in place. And they are sending some documents over to the county to get an agreement. Being that the county is the one that is the sponsor for the project, they have the agreement for work-in-kind type of work like this. So we would have to enter into an MOU with the county, who would then enter into and amend their agreement with the Corps of Engineers for this to be considered work-in-kind work. The county would, the Corps of Engineers would be responsible for overseeing the project. They're the expert when it comes to soils and that type of work. So we went out to bid, went out for an RFP. City advertised for approximately 2 weeks, received 3 bids for the project. The engineer's estimate was approximately $60,000 for us to contract out to do the work versus the Corps of Engineers estimate of $165,000. Moore Twining Associates did come in as a low bid. They came in at $54,336. We estimate the additional survey work the Corps is requesting at about $2,500 for a total price of $56,836. In addition, there will be more than likely some incidental expenses, so we're estimating total funding expended for the project will be about $60,000. In addition to that, my time required to oversee the project is also considered a work-in-kind cost that we can then add on to that for the Corps. It should be noted at this point that this is not a project that was included in the 2009-2010 budget, and it is a general fund reserve budget item that would impact our general fund expenditure, I apologize. Therefore, I'm bringing this to council for direction at this point. Due to this being a non-budgeted project and a general fund reserve expenditure, we're asking council for direction regarding this. One of your options is that we would not do this project and there would not be an impact on our budget. The other option would be to authorize a budget adjustment for $60,000 for the project, adopt a resolution awarding the bid to Moore Twining and Associates for the work, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Authorize staff to enter into an MOU agreement with the county for work in kind of this project. I know the mayor's been heavily involved in this project. He probably could add quite a bit more history to this or has more comments on that. But at this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Garner? Garner, I talked to Earl Prez, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday of last week, and he told me, because I had told the Corps that I felt that he would be our main person to get all the right of entries. And as of whatever day that was, Wednesday or Thursday, he told me that all the landowners were still reluctant to authorize, to give permission. And so the county is saying today, as of today, they got all that done, of course.
The Corps is saying, Michelle sent me an email stating that the last one that they were waiting on was CCID. Their attorneys had to look at it, and that they had all the right of entry agreements necessary to do the work. And so what I've requested is that I get copies of all those prior to us entering into a contract for that work. I need to make sure that a contractor has a right to go out and do the work before we enter into that agreement.
Yeah, that'd be nice to make sure we have those in hand.
Exactly. And then one of their geologists will be overseeing the work. I don't have expertise in this area, so.
Garner, and just off the top of your head, with the borings, what do we expect to find or see? I mean, you can't project what might be there, but what bad could come out of it?
What it could amount to is that it could increase the cost for the project if they determine that the soils are not of the nature that they would support that type of a levee. It could be a soil characteristic such that it increases water flow, and so then they'd have to go in and do additional soils work in order to build a levee that would not allow them to do that, or they'd have to put in some type of concrete structures along the canal at certain locations so that the water would not leak underneath the levee and flood the city of Newman or the ag areas. So ultimately it could show that there is additional costs. We are running up against that level of funding that could push us over the edge as far as how we can get that federal cost share part of it. But the Corps is reluctant to move forward with the feasibility study at this point in time until they know exactly what the makeup of those soils are where they would be building that levee, so they can then know when they move into the design phase of here's what the soils show, here's how we need to construct our levee. They don't want to go into it not knowing what they're facing.
I'm just concerned that the Corps is going to decide that we're going to need to study this a little bit more now, depending on what the soil borings reveal.
They have extended the project quite a bit with asking additional. We tried to push this part of the project into the design phase because this really is information they will take and use in the design of the levee. So they have the feasibility study phase, the design phase of it, and then the construction. And the county, Matt Machado and Supervisor DeMartini, both had requested, as we did, to push this into the design phase. But at this point in time, their engineers are reluctant to do that, and they basically said, no, we need this information now for the feasibility study.
Yeah. Well, I also talked to Dennis Cardoza, I think it's 2 weeks ago now, and vented more frustration to him how this project has seemed to come to a grinding halt, and asked him if he could help us push it into the design phase. He was, and I haven't heard back from him, he was going to meet with the colonel who's retiring and see if he could not connect with the new person coming in to make sure that this was still going to be a priority project with the Corps. And I was vented some frustration, the fact that, you know, we're having a difficult time getting into the design phase due to the Corps, try to be politically correct, somewhat dragging our feet and all the requests that keep coming from a couple individuals on that board or on that team. Only thing, again, he just keeps assuring me it's not going to go by the wayside, and he's going to make sure he can try to push it through. And I didn't call him back because I felt I didn't want to be a pain, but maybe I should have, just to make sure to reaffirm with him and through Dee Dee as well that this new colonel coming in, and that's really a concern of mine, of a new head honcho coming in, all of a sudden this project not being as important.
Right, and I think that's kind of another reason why they're pushing so hard for the soil borings, so the project doesn't stall and then get moved to a lower level priority for them. And they're trying to keep the momentum going. We've got a lot of momentum recently. I understand the project's been going on since '96, so it's been quite some time. Now that they have narrowed it down to kind of the plan that they want, and it's down to just a few other hurdles that we are trying to get over, and a lot of it, unfortunately, boils around the funding issue of it. The county has offered up another $53,000 to help the Corps, and we thank you for that, to help them move them along and limp them along a little bit longer, but they're at the point now, the last conference we had with them is the project's, at this point, the feasibility study will stop unless we move this project forward. But just so council's aware that, you know, we're looking for your direction because of the expense on this one. It is coming out of our general fund reserve account.
Any other questions, Garner?
This is just a terrible thing, you know. All these years, all that money, and we're still not even close.
We're still some time away from
Yeah.
actual construction.
Yeah. And we're still some time just getting into the design phase, but the concern is, we've gone this far. I just don't know that we can drag our feet and not go forward with it. It couldn't come at a worse time, financially for us as a city, but as much work and time and effort's been put in on this project, I just, we got to find a way to go forward with it, and until these borings get done, we're not going to go any further with the project. So,
Now, you talked about the colonel retiring
Yes.
as a project manager.
well, he oversees the Corps of Engineers.
Okay, so then who would fill his position?
I think probably Congress. I don't know if Congress appoints a new person to take over the Corps of Engineers. And when I spoke with Dennis Cardoza, I asked him, I said, hopefully you would get some bonding time with whoever this new person is going to be, and he assured me that he would, and that he would talk to the outgoing colonel and make sure that he lays a foundation in D.C. that little old Newman isn't forgotten. And and he also he told me that, and I told him, obviously we were concerned that we were going to miss the WARDA date, and he said, well, I wouldn't be too sure about that. It always runs 3 or 4 or 5 months behind schedule anyway, and as far as the funding cycles, so I kind of get mixed messages. So I don't know that we're going to meet that timeline anyway. But if we don't do the borings, if we don't get those samples done, the whole project's going to come to a screeching halt. And then what they do is they reassign all these team members. That group went from like 2 or 4 to 24. There's so many people involved, and they've got more specialists in this thing. It's unbelievable.
Well, do we really have a guarantee that if we put out the $60,000 for the boring, that this is going to stay a viable project? I mean, is it something they're just saying, or they're just?
Well, I think for sure if we don't do it, the project's going to come to a screeching halt. I don't know that it's going to help. It will put us one step closer to getting to the design phase.
This will only get us through the feasibility
Right.
study, doesn't get us through design. There's
Right.
additional costs incurred for the design as well, and I would expect that, there'll be some coming back and asking for more money to help out with the design phase as well. I don't see how that's not going to happen either. And I'm trying to remember the numbers. I can't remember off the top of my head how much a design phase, but it's a substantial investment. And then once the design is completed, there's also going to be a substantial investment in costs establishing a district that we can then look at doing an assessment district to help pay for some of these costs and the ongoing operations and maintenance. This is just the first step in a lot of steps that we have to take to get this project off the ground. I think probably the next step would be in parallel tracks, we'll be looking at establishing an assessment district, like a flood control assessment district, and the design phase at the same time. And so there is no guarantees if we spend this money that the project will get past feasibility, unless if the funding's there, then there may be that opportunity to move it forward.
Mayor, if I may add something.
Sure.
To maybe just add to the conversation. We're at the ending stages of what is a feasibility study. We're keeping our fingers crossed that the federal government is going to complete this feasibility study. Anytime you're dealing with the federal government, you don't know what you're going to get from day to day, and that's the unfortunate truth. Once we get through this feasibility study, though, the real work really starts to happen, because then we have a document that we bring back to our residents of our community and the outlying areas, the rural areas. They have to look at the plan, and they're going to have to make an economic decision on whether or not to support the development of a flood control district. Now, there are going to be people who live in this area, whether it be in our actual community and city limit proper versus the community outlying city limit proper, but they are a part of our community that are in the flood zone. They would benefit if this project ultimately gets done. They'll benefit because they'll no longer be in a flood zone and they won't have to pay flood insurance. The flip side is there's a lot of people in this community, again, in city proper and not, that are not in the flood zone, that we're going to ask them to also pay money on an annual basis to fund not only the design but the construction of the project. And that's not always an easy task. I think what people need to understand, in part, once we get past the feasibility, there'll have to be an education phase that lets people know that just because your house does not sit in a flood zone, you are impacted by flood waters. The roads are, the infrastructure there's a lot of different impacts on how that changes our lives, whether it's literally your home or not. So there's still a lot of work. But I think the key component is we need to finish this feasibility study and really get this thing off of the desk and into circulation, and let the people of this area make the decision of whether or not they want this project to go forward as a flood control project. That's the point that we're trying to get to, and these are some of the frustrations I know the supervisor has, as internally, our Public Works Director, Mr. Reynolds Garner, and I have had these conversations, as well as the mayor, as we've made these trips back and forth to Sacramento. We don't know if the full community is going to buy off on this, but we got to get to a phase where they can make an informed decision. Now we're keeping our fingers crossed, and the Corps is telling us, if you do this last 60,000, you're whole, we're good, we'll finish it up. But again, they have what's called
Is that a direct quote?
No. And they got to, and we asked them for that. We said, can we get it in writing? This is our last dollar, because we're very, very skeptical, very leery of what they say. And we like to joke that this is the Army Corps of Engineers Full Employment Act. We just continue to fund economists and geologists and the whateverist that they can think of, because there's a lot of those.
on that.
Yeah, a lot of it. So that's kind of where we're at. As staff, it's hard for us to make a solid recommendation on this. We see the value in it because we've come so far. We'd hate to let it stop. The other thing I want you to think about as a council is we've had tremendous support from our congressman. And I think a affirmative vote would show him that we are serious about this, and thank him for the support he's shown us. If we don't get an affirmative vote, he may look at this as like, what is going on? You guys have been asking me to put a lot of pressure, and he's done a lot for us in terms of keeping this project on the front burner. And I don't want to say it'd be a slap in the face, but I'm sure he would be disappointed if he found out that we've come all this far and for $60,000 the project is not moving forward. So,
No, I think we want to go forward, but I'm just saying we want
Unfor-
some reasonable assurance that, what we're doing, it makes sense, I mean.
From an engineer's perspective, I know Gardner thinks that I think it as well. This is not even something that needs to be done in the feasibility stage. It's more of a design phase stuff, but that's who they are, Bob, and we can't change them. We're only trying to accommodate them and trying to say, okay, wrap this thing up. That's some of my comments to Gardner were, get on that phone and at that last conference call, make sure this is it. We don't have any more money. Stop. Leave us alone. Finish it up. And unfortunately, we just cannot get that in writing like we would all like. So,
The only thing that I have read and heard from the Corps is, if this isn't done, if we don't move closer, everything stops and everybody gets reassigned different projects. So then once that happens, there's no guarantee that we're going to get all these same people back on the team. The team. So
and you can pretty much guesstimate that your 60 becomes about 200 because they're going to come up with something else in the meantime.
Okay,
all right, council direction.
okay. I make a motion that we authorize a budget adjustment of $60,000 for a Aristimba feasibility study, flood control project, soil boring, and survey work. Adopt resolution 2010 next number. Awarding the bid to Moore Twining Associates, Inc. for the Aristimba feasibility study, flood control project, soil bearing, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement and authorize staff to enter into an MOU with the Stanislaus County for credit as working in kind for this project.
Second.
The motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Carry on. All right, we'll go to item D, adopt resolution number 2010, next in number, resolution authorizing the purchase of one new police vehicle. All you guys do is want.
Want. Good evening, Mr.
Lieutenant
Mayor,
Short, go ahead.
council members. Tonight we're going to talk about our fleet a little bit. We have 11 police vehicles in our fleet, and 7 of these are used daily for patrol activities, be it animal control or the code enforcement, and then our general police vehicles. They range from model year 2002 to 2007. We were on a pace to purchase a new vehicle every year, and we have been since 1999, but we stopped in 2007. 2 of our vehicles are in need of replacement. One of them is I'll start with the good one, a 2003 Ford Crown Victoria. It is an LX. It wasn't even a police Interceptor at the time we purchased this one. It has 61,000 miles on it, and it has transmission issues. We've tried to give a Band-Aid to it. We've assigned it to the SRO so it doesn't see harsh daily use like a patrol vehicle would, but that transmission is going to fail sometime in the near future at an estimated repair cost of around $3,000 for that one. And then on to a 2004 Crown Victoria Police Interceptor that we have. It currently has 79,000 miles. And since December of this year, we've put $1,400 into this vehicle just to keep it on the road. Currently, it has a leaking head gasket, exhaust manifold leak, transmission control issue, and a window regulator, and needs tires. Estimated cost to get this on the road immediately is $3,000. And the head gasket issue could just be a gasket. It could be a head, which would be another $2,000 estimated on top of that. Or if it's a block issue, it could be another $4,000 on top of that, which would be putting roughly $7,000 into a 6-year-old police vehicle with 80,000 miles. And that's pretty tough to do. Staff is located at 2009 Dodge Charger and at Folsom Lake Dodge. And for $20,995 is the pre-tax price of that. 2010 Chargers are $25,000, and 2009 Ford Crown Crown Victorias are around $24, $25. So the 2009 Charger is the cheapest option. Fully upfitted with all the police equipment that we need, the lights, the push bar, the cage, so on and so forth, is an additional $8,300. So the out-the-door fully equipped price would be $32,074.75. This would be an impact from our capital repair and replacement fund, which currently has approximately $305,000 in it. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of the lieutenant? Brett, what was the cost of a new Crown Vic?
New Crown Vics, I just got an advertisement today, and it's 24 and change for a 2009 Crown Vic. And the Crown Victoria is going to be discontinued in 2011. So if we get on getting Chargers in our fleet, we can recycle some of the hard parts as they come offline later on, like the cage and the plastic back seats and some of the center console items. Currently, we can't do that, but down the line, we can recycle some of them hard parts.
Any other questions? Direction?
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2010, next number, a resolution authorizing the purchase of one new police vehicle.
I'll second that motion.
The motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. All righty. How soon are you gonna have that car, Brett?
Well, once we place the order, it should be in within a week.
Good luck. Okay, we'll go to item 11, items from District 5 Supervisor Jim D. Martini. Jim?
Good evening, Mayor Caton, council members. I just had a few things tonight. I don't have anything to add to the Orostemba Creek saga. I would like to say that we're 14 years and $6 million into this project already. $3 million of that has come from Stanislaus County. It doesn't look like we're getting anywhere, but we actually are, because we do have a project now that is just really close to getting into through the planning and into the design. Where, as you remember, a year ago we had all these options whether we were going to put in detention dams and other things. So we are getting there, but I'll tell you, it's sometimes frustrating that we just can't seem to really get on our way. But I thought that was a really good presentation. I just wanted to update you on what the Healthcare Task Force is doing. We're now doing the West Side walks at all three the high schools on the West Side, Newman, Patterson, and Gustine. Wednesday evenings, a walk around the track. I will be out next week. I have a LAFCO meeting tomorrow, and I had StanCog last week, but I will be out there too. I don't know if I'm going to come to Newman or Patterson, but I'll be out next week. The task force has something going on now year-round, where we've had the hikes and bike for your life, the West Side walks, the Biggest Loser contest, the calendar, the essay contest, and so we're very active now. And we have we've been through it all now. We're coming back and doing it the second time, so we're even better the second time than we were at the first. The next meeting will be here in Newman on July 29th. I don't know if you guys left the meeting before we assigned the actual date on that when we met in Gustine a few weeks ago, but it's July 29th here in Newman. We hope you'll be able to accommodate us. If there is a problem, be sure to let us know. We could possibly change the date if we have to. The Healthcare Summit will be here in Newman at the West Side Theater on August 12th. This is the kickoff to the Biggest Loser weight contest. We will have a luncheon, a speaker about healthcare issues, and then a weigh-in with our teams from Newman, Patterson, and Gustine, and possibly some from school districts if they want to participate. Our ag commissioner will be here with our scale, and he will give us a certified weight. And we've been assured that we will get press coverage for it like we did last year. So, you know, I have given the mayors a sheet to put their team together. So, anyway, August 12th, you have to have your team together and be ready for the weigh-in. We also like to thank the City of Newman for its financial support to the Healthcare Task Force. All three cities have contributed to the task force. We just need a little bit of money to keep on going. And in order to get grants, you know, we have to have some skin in the game ourselves. So all the cities have contributed. Golden Valley has contributed $5,000 a year. So has Emmanuel and Doctors Hospital. And then I will be making a presentation to the Board of Supervisors in Merced County August 10th to get their support. Stanislaus County is also contributing to it. So we have a plan, we have some financial backing, we have just a really good working group now, so I look for a lot of good things in the future. On another subject, Stanislaus County has decided to join Newman and Oakdale to try and recover our fuel tax money, which has been stolen by the city of Modesto. We're very serious about this, and we will be on board to go to the Board of Equalization to complain about the city of Modesto's paperwork scam and kickbacks to the oil company, which robs the cities and the county of their rightful share of the fuel tax money. I have complained about this openly on the Board of Supervisors and called it just what it is a paperwork shuffle and a kickback scheme. And there is really no another way you could put it than what it is. They are robbing local municipalities that are very short of cash, and we need to put a stop to it. Hopefully we'll be able to get something done next month. And then tomorrow we will have our monthly breakfast meeting with Mayor Caton and Becky Campo. I hope you remembered that. I didn't talk to you about it tonight. We were talking about the Board of Equalization. It's on my calendar. We've called Becky Campo. We're supposed to meet here in Newman tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at the Grill.
Supervisor, you're talking about Thursday, correct?
Yeah.
Is it
We've
Thursday?
been meeting on the Thursdays, not on Wednesdays.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it was Thursday then. I know it was coming up here this week, so. Do you have it on your calendar?
I do.
Yeah, so we last met was on the 27th of May, so, yeah.
Let me just check here. Yeah, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday, I don't know. Is it Thursday?
Thursday at 8 at Mills, right? I mean, I'm
That's
sorry, at the Grill.
That's correct.
I had it down for Wednesday, but I can make it Thursday too. But we'd also call Becky Campo, so I could call her back tonight. We probably need to talk to each other a few days before these meetings to be sure we're all on the same page on that. But I found these once-a-month meetings have been very productive to go over the issues concerning the West Side. So I'll put it down then for Thursday morning. Okay, great. See you then.
Thank you, Jim. Items from City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. A couple of things to report out. I believe we handed you our colorful newsletter. This was done by a resident of Newman who is now attending the University of Southern California. She did it as a project. Her name is Ariana Gomez, and we'd like to thank her for all her hard work in putting this thing together. You can now find this on our website, and we'll be making copies and putting those at our counters on our public buildings. I don't think we are going to be mailing it out this year just due to cost and our inability to fund those things at this point in time. But it will be available to everybody on the website. as well as hard copies in most of our city buildings. Also, we have a new recycling program schedule. If you look at that frequently to see when to put out your recycle can, you'll notice that does expire this month. New ones are already online, and they'll be going out this month's billing cycle. So those will be going out to you in your July billing cycle, I believe. So you'll be getting those within the next 20 or 30 days as well. Because we won't be meeting ahead of time, and July 4th falls on a Sunday this year, City Hall will be closed on July 5th as a observance of the July 4th holiday. I know some of you have asked about this in the past, and we just got word from our building official. The variance for the RV shade structure is now measured at 12 feet.
Oh, good.
So he's in compliance. That is the official word from our building inspector today, or earlier this week. He says that he went out personally and measured it, and it's at 12 feet. Surprise, surprise.
How did that happen?
He does wonders. I received an email from former council member Kelly today. He wished you all well, as well as our community. He wished us well. I hope we don't read too much into this, but we are very excited to be hosting representatives from the state of California next Tuesday. They will be coming out to look at our aquatic center site. As you know, we applied for a Prop 84 grant. Those people who are doing the grant scoring would like to come out to our site and do a visit and meet with staff and answer some questions. So, while we are not assured the grant, it is definitely good news that they think highly enough of our project to come out and look at the site and look at where we're at. We'll be able to show them our construction documents and show them that, hey, we're ready to go. This is a real project. We've already expanded it. It really helps that the improvements we've already made to the first part of the park, the Howard B. Hill Park site, that's part of our grant application as an in-kind contribution, so they're going to see how those work together, and I think, we're obviously going to keep our fingers crossed, but it is definitely a good sign that, our planner, Ms. Ocasio, has put together a very strong application, and we are being considered, I don't know if we're a finalist or at least a semi-finalist for the grant application.
When are they coming out, Michael?
That would be on the 29th, a week from today.
That's good.
That's very good news.
Now, they'll get a history of what's transpired in Newman as far as how we lost our old.
We will try to give them the full.
Yeah, I think it's important because,
Yeah.
the cities like Newman, we need that sort of thing for the youth of the community.
Yeah, I think when
And
we
for
drive,
their dollars.
I think when we drive them out the site, we'll take that scenic route by the old site
That's what I was gonna say.
and let them see how that's gone. Well, it may be coincidence, but I believe Dr. Foss might be in the area,
Yeah, that would
or
be
an
nice.
after-school program person might be in the area to show how the school district could also benefit
Yeah.
from a joint use on that. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely pull out all the stops to make sure we get plenty of people
Very good.
meeting on that. So.
Yeah.
On behalf of the police department, we'd like to thank you tonight for funding the vehicle. We've been challenged recently with our budgets, and some of those have fallen on the wayside. We decided to move forward tonight with the purchase of a vehicle because of the shape that they're in. We still have one that's very challenged, but in working with Mr. Sam William from California's Consulting, our new grant writer, he's indicated that we may be eligible for a 35% grant from USDA.
That's good.
So 35% of $32,000 might save us $11,000. The reason why we went forward tonight was because that process takes 3 or 4 months to go through in order to get that grant money. We really didn't have 3 or 4 months on those cars. So in working with our lieutenant and our chief, we decided, okay, let's try to go forward with one. We're getting a good price on that 2009 Dodge. We'll limp along and try to start that process for the USDA grant so we can get that other car funded, at least with the 35% match, and then give you the opportunity there. And then lastly, you've met him at our last meeting, and I'm proud to announce that Mr. Lou Humphreys is now our full-time finance director. I'd like to thank Mr. Budman, who came down from South Lake Tahoe yesterday. It's been full day yesterday and half a day today working with them, and we're very happy to have Mr. Humphreys as part of our team now. We think he'll be a great long-term addition to city staff. So with that, that's all that I had at this time.
Great. Any questions, Michael? Okay, staff, who wants to be first? Garner. Look at Garner, jump right up.
Got to try to get a leg up on them sometime.
You're not going to ask for money, are you?
You already gave him 60,000.
And I do thank you. I do thank you for that 60,000, as I'm sure the Corona County does.
Checkbook's closed.
Checkbook's closed.
For a while.
Okay, so I'll move on to my next subject then. Highway 33, as you can see, we are actually getting some work out of Caltrans out there, and it's coming along very nice. Did see a few hiccups in the paving. I kind of met Dean out there, and we were kind of chuckling as one of the trucks was sliding down the pavement into our curb and gutter and picking himself up and sliding. But their foreman assured me later on today that everything is moving along just fine, and they should get the rest of the bulk of the paving completed tomorrow. And they'll come back and they have the edges of the curbs to do and stuff like that. So they're coming along nicely. About the time they get their project completed, we're moving right into the Plaza project. It really works out really nice. One of my big concerns was having Caltrans working and our contractor working on site. With Premier Green Hydro Seeding, they've been really nice about, we'll wait till we're ready to go. Their project's wrapping up on Hill Park, so the timing's kind of working out right. The groundbreaking ceremony went very well. I do thank the speakers for speaking. I think you did an excellent job. I had a lot of good positive feedback on that. Pre-construction meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. We're getting a contractor together, all his subs together. AECom, our engineer that you awarded the contract for construction management of the project. We're all meeting here tomorrow for a couple hours to get this project kicked off and on a good start. Once I get the construction schedule from the contractor at that point, then I'm going to schedule another merchant meeting with the downtown businesses so that we can sit down one more time with the contractor and discuss some of the issues and how we can help resolve those. I've been getting a lot of feedback. I'm still pounding the pavement with our merchants and trying to get more feedback. I've met with the grill at the Chamber Mixer, and they're very excited about the project as well. They indicated to me they may be looking at some patio modifications and maybe getting a beer and wine license so that they can enhance their business as well. I think that the Plaza project is going to see more of that happening. We're going to see that between the main street that was developed a few years back and the Plaza project, I think you're going to start seeing more businesses looking at that being their core area. So that's a good note. Hill Park, which I briefly touched on, they're planning on paving the parking lots on Friday, and they'll get in there hydro seed the rest of that. So that project will wrap up. The block wall is straight, it's up, it looks great. I think it's a great addition to the park, and I think it was good news today to hear about potential visit on that grant. Tiger Construction's out there. They're going to finish up putting the sidewalks completely around the park for us, except for one little spot on West Avenue where the lift stations are. We got to figure out how we're going to handle that part of it, but 95% of the park will have curb gutter, sidewalk, and paving around it, and it'll look like a finished project at that point. One thing I'd like to touch on a little bit is our landscape and lighting districts. The ballots are still out there, and if anybody would like to contact me if they have any questions or comments or concerns, please feel free to contact me. I'll come out and discuss it with you. I'll be happy to discuss it over the phone. I would probably say 99% of the people that I've talked with regarding the ballot, once I talked with them, they're very positive and looking at returning a positive vote on that. I've probably had 3 conversations today, plus I met with SCM Homes, and once I met with them, they were very excited about it, and they're returning all their ballots in the positive on that one. Block wall repairs. So we got an estimate for the block wall repairs. We're going to move that forward. I'm not asking for you for any money for that tonight, but we are moving that forward. I did get the insurance information from the police department, so we'll be looking at reimbursement on that. And street sweeping. So we are now moving to a new street sweeping schedule. That will be coming out. We're going to be posting on the website. We're going to try and include that in a mailer to all the residents. And we're looking at sweeping the downtown every Monday and Friday, except holidays. That'll be adjusted either a Tuesday or a Thursday, depending on which day the holiday falls on. So the downtown will be swept twice a week. Residential areas will be swept twice a month. And that schedule is not set on like the second and fourth Thursday or Tuesday or Monday, but they have set schedules for those days, and we'll be getting that calendar produced and printed out for the residents. And that's about all I have. If there are any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions of Garner?
Carter, do you
Yes,
know
sir.
how the project is coming to the downtown, the planning of the plots and tree wells? I know there's 2 groups that are supposed to come through, I think once a month each group. Has that started?
When the last time I talked to Susan about a month ago, that they were going to get that rolling. They were waiting on us to, we were maintaining for the first month to get the plants established.
Okay.
All the pots have been replanted, and all of the downtown wells have been weeded, and we put in new ferns. That we wanted to get them through that 30-day maintenance period, and about a month ago, we turned it over. I'll touch base with Susan again to ensure that the students are helping us out with that.
Yeah, I thought that was a real critical part of the program because, you know,
Mhm.
in the past, we plant it and then we don't wait, we wait another year before we plant it again or check it, you know, so.
And then our staff is going to stay on top of that. Jamie Sotelo, he's the person that's responsible in Public Works to ensuring the downtown is kept up. He's going to be monitoring that, and if it he knows that we can let Susan know to get our students out there. I think they'll be real responsive, but the guys are too proud of what they accomplished, and they're not going to let it go away at this point.
Yeah.
So the flowers are starting to bloom. We're really looking good downtown. It's working. See? All right. So, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
No problem.
I just had one, and I marked it and I forgot. A lot of cities are looking at ways of cutting or saving funds, and I've been kind of watching ours. I'm just referencing PG&E, what our bill is this month, last month. It's over $39,000, almost $40,000 for gas and electric. Now I think it looks like it runs $40,000 roughly for like. I know a lot of cities are doing, and I don't know if it's even a viable option for us in terms of cost saving. How realistic would it be in terms of any savings if we were to start cutting back some of our street lights? Let's say, for instance, this is Highway 33, for instance. If, you know, we turned off every other light or whatever, in some of the different parts of town, is that even a viable option?
Well, some cities, due to having some dire budgets, are doing that. I think it's Colorado Springs, cut it back every other light. Every other day that light's on, and then every other day the other light is on. They're looking at some drastic measures. Everybody that I've spoken to regarding the landscape and lighting district ballots, when I bring that subject up, that we may be looking at that if this ballot doesn't pass, of some way of reducing the cost of our PG&E by reducing street lights, everybody did not want that to happen. They want their street lights on. It is a public safety issue, and I think that having those in their neighborhoods, it does deter crime. It is a positive aspect to have those lights on, but I can guarantee you that we would probably get a bit of outcry from our public if we started reducing that. An option that we have is maybe looking at putting in LED to save energy. And then I've also had somebody ask me about potentially solar. Solar, I haven't looked into that yet, so I don't have an answer for that, but I think LED is worth looking into any way we can to reduce that. And I know some other agencies have gone to the every other light every other night.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, my recommendation is going to be no on that one. I would recommend that we keep the street lights on just for public safety reasons. We give them a shadow to hide in, they're going to utilize it. Pioneer Park, we got one area that had some shadows in it, and that side of the building got graffitied constantly. We put a light out there, cut it back to at least half.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a savings doing that. So sometimes we have to spend a little to protect our community. I think it's probably worthwhile. But I think we could look into some LEDs and some other options.
Yeah, and I know, and I just can't recall. Recently, a city close to us, and city attorney said he thought that Ripon had done something similar. I knew I had read something about it. And I know Fresno has looked into it, a lot of other places, and I'm not saying that's something I'd like to see us do, but.
What I can do is we have a directors roundtable. All the public works directors get together and discuss ideas. And at our next roundtable, I'll bring it up about options that they're doing regarding their street lighting, and see if I can get some feedback, because I don't think that I need to reinvent the wheel, but I can learn from what they've learned, and maybe I can bring that back to council.
And certainly, if there's lights that are more efficient, we certainly should look at that.
I agree. The only complaint you get from LEDs, and if you drive in through the city of Modesto, you'll see it sometimes, is they are higher intensity, and if you have an issue with intense lights at night, they will impact you. There's times, I've had the refractive surgery done, and so my eyes have a little more refraction on the lights, and I've seen the green lights hit me as I'm driving through Modesto, and the rain's on the ground, and they're pretty intense. So that is something that people would have to adjust to. Some of the newer cars that come out with higher intensity lights. But if I think it would give us what we need as far as energy savings, and I think it would be a good thing. So I'll look into that for us.
Okay.
What about cutting the hours short, slightly? Having them run a little later at night and go off a little earlier in the morning, would that help?
We would have to go in and put in a timing sensor in there. Right now, we have dusk to dawn sensors in them. So we'd have to work with PG&E, and that's an opportunity. I'll look into that one. That's a good idea. We could, right at the last hour, maybe end up cutting 2 hours off the time. That might help. Great suggestion.
Well, I just think it's important that, that we explore all possibilities and all options, to do whatever we can to save. And if we could save $2,000 or $3,000 a month, then I think it's worth, that's,
I would agree.
so. Okay.
Mayor, I'd like
Yes.
to remind the council, it's been a number of months now, and the project's still ongoing, but we do have EECBG money. We've actually had PG&E come out and do an audit of all of our facilities and our streetlights. We have approximately $56,000 or so, $60,000 that they're going to be coming in here shortly and doing upgrades to streetlights in our city buildings to help us become more energy efficient. So that project probably be taking place in the next 90 days or so.
I just emailed Mr. Nemick, and he said that there was a little bit of delay from the state to actually get everything rolling, but he's thinking the next few months. So
Okay.
I'm hoping by late summer that we can get going. We met with the consultant to actually talk about specific items and equipment, so there has been progress.
Yeah, some of that's on the way now.
Great.
So,
A couple of things
and
they were
when we
looking at.
and when we are replacing streetlights, they are non-LLD areas, so because those are general fund expenses. So we first focus on the general fund expense areas, and then if we have additional money over time, then we'll try to branch out into the LLD areas from there.
Yeah, with the grant that they're talking about, they're looking at some of the high-intensity air bulbs and replacing them, make them more efficient. At the Memorial Building last year, council authorized us to replace the air conditioner when it broke. We put in a high-efficiency unit in there that also it senses the air temperature outside versus the air temperature inside the building, and it knows when to turn on and turn off the actual cooling mechanism versus the fan. So we have taken steps in that direction, and like I said, Stephanie has gone around with PG&E, looked at every light in every building to see about ways of improving our efficiency with the lighting part of it.
Great.
So,
Great. Thanks, Garner.
you bet. Thank you.
Lewis? You don't want to do your first official report? Okay. Chief?
Again, Mayor, council members. I just have a few reminders tonight. Touched on a little bit last meeting. The animal shelter is now open, and we do have animals for adoption. You can view those animals on Facebook currently at City Hall, in the billboard, and at the PD on the billboard. We're also looking into getting on the city website for those that don't have Facebook. So we're in the works of that. Along with the city website, out there to remind everybody that there is beat quadrants, and there's officers assigned to those quadrants. So if you have problems in your areas, you can contact those officers directly through email. Let them know what your problem is, and they'll handle it. That way you don't have to worry about, if it's a minor problem, not emergency, you obviously want to call 911, but other little things, boat parking, your neighbor's parking their boat, contact them and they'll direct them in the right place. And identity theft and scams, be aware, going on. A lot of phone calls being placed to elderly people saying, I'm with your physician, I need some information from you. If they don't have the information and they're saying they're with your doctor, don't believe them. Something comes in the mail saying you won the lottery in the UK, it's probably not true.
I didn't?
No, you didn't. Don't send them $2,500.
$2,500. That's $2,500 for $14 million.
Yeah.
Did you tell me it was too late?
It's a good investment. Things like that. If it doesn't look right, it's probably not right. Monitor your email accounts. A lot of email takeovers. where they're getting contacts from your address book and sending out emails as if they were you asking for money because you're in trouble, you're stuck in Zimbabwe and you can't use the phone and you need them to wire you money. So be aware, monitor your stuff daily, make sure you check up on it. And that's all I have for tonight. Any questions?
Any questions of the chief? Thank you.
That's good.
Stephanie, anything? You sure, Louis? Okay. Roberta?
I don't have anything tonight.
Nick?
Nothing tonight.
Bob?
Yeah, just a question. I should have asked Randy. Unfortunately, we lost our police officer on the bicycle, and I've heard from my good friend Nick Candia that there was a concern.
We talked a little bit.
Oh, you talked a little bit.
But that's okay.
But anyway, just so the public knows what's going on, I know that there was a lot of good feedback from that. I know there's some staffing issues and stuff like that, but at some point, I think that it would make sense if we get something like that back. And I'm not saying tomorrow, but, you know, just so it's possibly in the future, near future, or whatever.
Absolutely. The bike officer that you're referring to was promoted to corporal,
Yeah.
which puts him onto patrol, which leaves a void with our current restructuring. We're waiting for a timing issue to rehire. So once we rehire, we will be filling that position back. That's what we'll be hiring for. We'll go out for candidates specifically, like we did with him, specifically for that. If that's what you guys.
Yeah, and I think it's probably critical, Randy, if nothing else, maybe have the guys, and I know you've mentioned it, especially during the afternoons and evenings, you know, get out of their cars. I noticed tonight when I was driving around that there was a group down by the usual hangout at Fresno on Main Street, you know, and doing their, you know, the skateboarding thing. But and Noel did a great job. That was, you know, it made us look pretty smart once we had him down on the bicycle, and it's how quickly the complaints start coming in again. Because people notice the void that, you know, we don't have anybody down there. So bad news travels fast.
It does, and we've seen it too. And we're, you know, you take it from one person on patrol where we had him designated to the downtown.
Yeah.
It's kind of a hard thing to do,
Yeah.
but with timing, we'll get that position back and
Yeah,
continue to
Yeah.
fulfill it.
great. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I don't have anything this evening, so we'll close, go into closed session. Item A is conference with real property negotiator in Merced County. And that's it. So we're in closed session. We're adjourned.